can get damaged from touching. So be careful with the chairs, but I would like to ask Tomasz Gajderowicz again to join us, who is somewhere here, I hope. Jonathan. And we also have 3 additional people who participate, and they are luckily connected to business. So challenge accepted, I hope. So I would like to ask Aleksandra Karasińska from Ringer Axel Springer, who is currently the head of a foundation of RASP, but she is a very experienced journalist. She used to lead Newsweek and Forbes. She has a lot of experience. She's an author of books about the role of women. We are very happy that you were with us. Piotr Arak, who is chief economist at Velobank, but also ex-official, so he must have a very interesting perspective. And I would like to ask Małgorzata Mroczkowska-Horne, who's the executive director or general director of Lewiatan, Confederation of Employers. So she represents all Polish corporations, and we will ask her what she thinks about the data. So what shall we start with? It's difficult because I didn't understand everything, and I don't know if it was understandable to all. But we understood the main message, that education builds the economy, and Tomasz Gajderowicz was speaking about it in a strong and a spectacular manner, so we appreciate it. So maybe I'll start with one question, which is maybe a bit cheeky. Well, if this is so obvious, then, well, in Lewiatan you have all Polish businesses, right? So why isn't it on the first pages of newspapers? Why businesses do not deal with it as much? Because I assume that there is something with the narrative around the topic. Do you believe that this is a topic that could be introduced to the fora? You also organize conferences as RASP. I've seen you recently in many places, recently in Brussels, actually, so that it becomes a topic not nice to have, but a topic meaning that we need to do something with it. Yes, absolutely. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Absolutely. This is a must-have topic. We see it everywhere on all levels, from the level of recruitment to our company, to our confederation, to the meetings at the level of the conference where we organize or participate in Poland and in Europe as Lewiatan. We have dealt with this topic. At EFNI, there were paths related to education, but in different times they tackle different aspects of education. And education is related directly with reading. It was said today here very clearly that the type and quality of society translates to how it is educated, how information was presented to the society. In the era of universal misinformation, it's even more significant. And I don't mean on the level of selection of younger, older, or any types of employees, but we can see the difference in experience if we focus only on youth. Of course, we have the best of the youth that come to Lewiatan, just like with KPMG that Jonathan talked about, yes, and like with many other organizations. Before I started to work on my position in Lewiatan, I was a legal counsel for 30 years, and I worked in big legal corporations, and I was dealing with a huge palette, huge range of people from the youngest to very advanced. And there is something, just like you said, Tomasz, that there are people who know very well their area, but they don't know much about life. And with great probability, we can suspect that their reading customs are quite limited. And there are many people who are able to figure out many topics, but superficially. And there are specialists who have various profiles, intellectual or others. On the European level, they say a lot about the necessity to build our resilience as society from the level of education. And we meet it at specialist conferences and at political conferences as well.
So that is good news. I hope so. That somehow it is coming through. So now I would like to turn to Piotr then, who today is an expert at Velobank, but he used to work at the Chancellery of the Prime Minister of Poland and high-ranking civil servant as well. So you have got, as a financial person, you have the experience from the corporation, but also from public administration. Because, well, it is cool that it's being talked about. However, I get the impression that we are still in silos, and our country, our state is run like this, but it's different saying, yes, education is important, and it is housed at the Ministry of Education, and so the Ministry of Education should deal with all of it. And something else is saying our civilization actually is dependent on whether we will be able to apply and learn and apply critical thinking. But it's not just about the Ministry of Education. This is the Ministry of Innovation, of digitization, agriculture, and health. Do you believe that it is realistic in any way that literacy is this new climate, so to speak, that we talk about it holistically, that this is the task of the Ministry of Culture and Education? Let them run it and be rid of it, yeah? We don't have to deal with it. So maybe two comments to begin with. First of all, when it comes to being a civil servant, I've got very little to do with that, because each time I worked in the public sector, it wouldn't be as a civil servant, I wouldn't be a clerk. It was in the units that were out of ordinary, so to speak, that are not connected with the clerk's work. This was like the group of strategic advisors to the Prime Minister, and also creating the Polish Institute as well. So it had very little to do with being a clerk. And this is also true for those who have been and still are involved in that institution. So surely I will not be able to represent the civil servants here and the civil service, because I have never been so closely connected with it. However, I would like to start with the second issue, because I deal with macroeconomics. And Charles Wypusz, one of my mentors, said that he's a macroeconomist, so he deals with everything. And this is because we deal with different things. Yes, because this is about the politics, education, the labor market. So at the end of the day, this is the high level of generalization. When it comes to themes that we can deal with, we see it, yes, with GDP, it's 1 digit, and inflation is 1 digit. So this is the accumulation of activities, of planning, of insights as well. So the increase of prices, that is also our activity. It is reflected in factors as well. And when a crisis strikes, well, everything in economy is also connected with what the consumer does, at least partially. What is important in the question why this is not the greatest priority, or why it is so difficult to increase the level of involvement, the decision makers, in educational issues. Well, education is a public good. It is offered. Some of the competences are in the local administration, some of it is in the central administration. The schools are there. The teachers get their salaries, sometimes even they pay rises. The exams are carried out, yes. There are other changes in the educational program, yes, there are. Do we employ experts that also implement different activities and tasks so that we have a better educational system? Yes. Do we get the money from the EU so that we have a better education system, so that it is better and it keeps on developing? Yes. We have institutions of culture to promote literacy also, and we even have research each year and studies how little Poles read. So the system exists. Yes, and we could say that this system works really well. Well, to some extent, yes. So from that perspective, maybe I will defend the decision makers. For someone who is not in the world of education, that the basic tasks that we have and goals in the educational program, something that we have ever since we had the Industrial Revolution, so that the workers can carry out their task, then yes, we have implemented that. And then the state is also important because we agreed to do that. We pay taxes to do that. So the educational system does work, maybe better or worse, but for an outsider, the tasks, the goal has been achieved. But the basic question is whether this system answers the question that the economy may have in a few years' time or in a decade. Are we able to anticipate certain changes? And there are a lot of changes, but how to react to them skillfully. So that is about many different aspects of our economy. For example, agriculture. It is highly technical. There is a lot of technology. It is very effective in using technology. And this is about technologies connected with biology, and I know nothing about it, but there are also drones that help with seeding and also with cereal monitoring. So these are changes that increase productivity in the agricultural sector. This is something that we would like to also observe and see in Poland. We would like to be in the forefront of those changes. However, I don't have a recommendation here. Maybe I will paraphrase as Maria, but I would like to conclude with saying that what I see as necessary and what Ricardo Hausmann also says, and I will use his words as support, is that we need positive deviance. So he talks about cooperation. Yes, that we need persons who, when entering the system, maybe not forever, but for some time, they also carry out a task, and that modifies the system. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes such teams are created to break something down. Well, there is a group that has a certain goal, and it doesn't work out. So it turns out that the diagnosis is correct. However, the recommendations that come out of that work change something positively. So this is the most important thing, to find those who will want to change something in the system, who will want to really pick up a fight and fight all of those ministries. They will also have enough powers from their own heads and their managers to do something. So I will paraphrase, and then I will probably ask Ola to comment on my paraphrase in that context. So to really see that better, there are certain subjects, certain areas such as sports, and let's say this climate, and maybe the cigarettes as well, that during our lifetime, I'm not so sure about the sports, but during our lifetime and the lifetime of our parents maybe, they have come so deeply into our society that today maybe you are not the Ministry of Sports, but as a manager, as a president of a company, you do pay for multisport. You pay for the gym for your employees because you know that otherwise people are not going to be productive. But this is that secret, yes? How to do it, to take us from the situation in which these days some companies, of course, they are wonderful companies that also do other things, but there are also those companies that pay for the gym, and, well, they also have Green Thursdays, fruit on Fridays, and there are also other benefits for the employees, and all of that is very important. However, there is no such thing, although it is starting, but it's not universal yet, and that is my goal, and this is what I'm trying to achieve, that it's not on a universal level yet. So I wouldn't say that the issue of sports has been solved. Well, it is high level of an issue. Maybe sports is actually even treated worse than literacy and reading, because looking at the obesity levels amongst young people, how is that? Maria, I didn't want to say that it has been solved when it comes to sports. No, I wanted to show that mentally it has been noticed that there is a problem with that. Ola disagrees. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Maria, thank you very much for your invitation. But I would like to mention that as a manager and director of the foundation, I will speak from the point of view of business. I also represent one of the bigger media groups in Poland. It is a business. It's media that you know. It's Onet, Newsweek, Fact, Forbes, and others. But I also am a creator, a writer. I write books, articles. I'm a journalist. So I represent this creative part of the economy. So in a moment, I'm going to respond whether they notice something. They've got the employee fund, and they have to spend that money. So it's easier to spend it on multisport, on gym and sports benefits as subscriptions, for example. So it's not really a meta-analysis in business. However, to comment on what Piotr said, the way this thinking goes, how important literacy is for the economy. So what you said, we've got the educational system, we've got the ministry, we've got cultural institutions as well. So we are in the age of disruption. And the system that was created mid-20th century, or more or less mid-20th century, well, it has changed and it doesn't work. And it doesn't work for many reasons. We've got the climate crisis, we've got the economic crisis, we have got the energy crisis, we have got geopolitical disturbances as well. And first of all, we have got wave after wave of technological revolutions. So over the last 20 years, the way we live, we consume information, how we live, how we work, how we relax has been disturbed by this technological process. And for me, as a journalist, it is this technological part that is the biggest disruptor. So we are in the eye of the storm, of the cyclone at the moment, because those waves of, for example, AI at the moment, those waves of technological disruption also overlap with the previous waves. So the data you showed from the UK and the decrease in literacy amongst the young people, well, they come directly from the smartphone use and also accessibility and access to the internet and social media. So now we look at time spent. It is not the user, it is not the views, it is the time spent on the device or on the platform. That is the measure for everything. And that means that those children spend time on social media, for example, platforms, and of play, read, run, play with other kids as well. It is also done by the adults, however, lesser so. There are less addicted to that means. So when we talk about literacy, to conclude this part, as the whole media industry, we are in a deep crisis.
Which is related to the crisis of readership. The losses of media, of the press, is 2 digits, 14% year to year. Some newspapers, 20% year to year. They lay off 200 people per year. So there are no proofreaders, for example. AI is proofreading, and not because the owners of the newspapers really want to squeeze more profit, but because there are no profits, because people don't read. You cannot buy newspapers anywhere, and this business becomes unprofitable completely. This means also that my students of journalism at the university do not know any traditional media, because the whole knowledge about the world they get from social media. And I'm going to leave you with this horrible data. As the majority of humanity, Reuters Institute study, Digital News Report 2024. This is the newest report showing the global consumption of information, knowledge about the world in general. Well, it shows that the majority of humanity in the world, including Poland, that this knowledge comes from social media, that traditional media is not even on the second position. It is on the third position, and I'm talking about online. On the second position is Google search. So first, social media, the second is the search engine, and third, online traditional publishers. And the proportion has changed since 2018, within the last 7 years. In 2018, traditional media was #1 in the world. Today, social media. And with entering of AI, this trend just is even faster. So we are at the moment where content, audio, video, text will be created with the use of AI and various tools. It's going to be very cheap, and the content will be of very low quality, and it's going to be available. The internet will be full of it. And while the quality content, books, journalism, will be very expensive and available only for few who will be able to pay for it, which, as you know, has huge implications, both insofar as democracy, inequalities, insofar as politics and crisis of democracy. So those who have access to real information can, for example, make informed decisions at the elections. And I'll leave you with this sad constatation. So what has happened here? Well, this is what we've started with this morning, that how not to waste the fact that we have public education and theoretically democratic access to knowledge if we allow for screens, for devices to, instead of creating democratization, would be creating this scenario. They are doing that already, those divisions and competences. We are going back to oligarchy.
About the companies that you work with. So British Land or Premier League or other organizations, would they, is the idea of sort of joining, being partners with the National Literacy Trust, is it around what they're doing to for the communities which you described, or is it also linked to them working with their employees and trying to invite their own employees into reading? Or is it?
Yeah, it is. And it works in different ways in different companies. And for some companies, it's about the well-being of their employees. So we've worked extensively with JP Morgan, and they use online reading groups, sometimes led from the States, as these kind of global moments when the company turns onto a book and relaxes. For other companies we've worked with, it's about equality and diversity and inclusion, and they will look at their LGBTQ group or their black employee group, and they will celebrate the diversity of the staff through literature. So it has different functions. I mean, I also just want to come back to, I was really taken by some of the things that Piotr was saying about the limitations of current policy frameworks. And it's, we haven't cracked it in the UK, but it's the same conversation which we've been having. And I wrote down one of the phrases you used, which was one of the problems is that our economic arguments are high levels of generalization, which I think is spot on. And about 4 years ago, somebody called Gus O'Donnell, who was the head of the civil service in the United Kingdom, he was an economist, and he took early retirement. And he decided he was going to work with charities and NGOs on the formulation of evidence for government which would be within the criteria which government would expect. And we've started working with him, and he's developed an economic unit called Pro Bono Economics. It's not pro bono, but anyway. But we've started working with that, and it's very interesting because it's shifting the way in which we think about the economic case we take to government. The other thing which struck me from what you were saying was, in the run-up to, there was an election last year in the United Kingdom, and a Labour, a socialist government got in. And in the run-up to that election, they had conversations with NGO leaders about the way in which public policy could be done differently. And we said that there were several big problems with public policy. The first one was, there's an election every 5 years. and therefore, you're going to set goals for the next 4 years, which are never, you know, we want goals for the next 15, 20 years. We also said, you can't fix it on your own. Government, stop thinking that government has all the answers. Government needs to work in partnership with the third sector and also with the business community on a different way. So we formulated they worked with a number of leaders from the NGO sector and from the business community on the formulation of what they referred to as missions. Now, we're still waiting to find out if they're going to do what they said, which was set medium-term goals beyond one parliament, work collaboratively with. But it's interesting that we're having exactly the same conversations about how to do things differently. We need to alter the structures and the systems, and someone's got to do that, and the political conversations has to happen. Sorry, that wasn't a direct answer to your question.
Yeah,
but
it's very interesting. And it's the 7 birds, I guess, right? Who have to do this, the 7 birds that Robert mentioned. Dobrze, to ja bym się zapytała tutaj.
Right, then I'll ask. Not an official? Well, we don't know. The Institute of Educational Research, since for you, both for you and for Maciej Jakubowski, this is so obvious that this reform, the reform of education, has a gigantic, huge significance for the economic future of Poland. Do you talk, I don't know, with the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economy, Minister of State Assets? Are there any flows, if I may say so? Do you have an opportunity to throw it anywhere? I'm not saying that you should tell the Minister of Finance, hey, you have to become the second Minister of Education now, but to build understanding of all of that. Are you sitting strongly in what you do and there are no cross-sectoral talks for now? Everything that you've said is the truth. First of all, the Institute of Educational Research, well, we really don't want it to have any political affiliation. Well, it is. because it is under the Minister of National Education. But our dream is for this unit to be like centers that deal with drug research and medicine, that have the task to deliver highest quality facts of relations with educations with the labor market, how to teach effectively, what do studies say about it? Because unfortunately in education, like in other areas, we are met with huge lobbying on the side of various private institutions, because education is a huge business in its own. When we look at what is advertised, gamification, for instance, what is lacking is looking at the facts, and we try to be that as far as possible from politics. And what is called a reform is the reform of the ministry, but we prepare solutions. We say, all right, we have 7 areas of challenges, and every one of them are things that result from scientific research, analysis that comes out of Polish studies, cognitive studies, and brain studies, and we put it on a table, and we try to constitute ourselves as a unit which is strictly a research unit, scientific unit. And I believe this is a great value, because this is the biggest problem of Polish education, and not only Polish, the fact that everyone, I like this comparison. Although at the table we don't have doubt that if the doctor says that we should take this medicine like that because it's based on some clinical studies, trials, although in education we all challenge it. We don't look at the facts as much. I remember from the UK various discussions about education, and I remember the questions, public questions from the journalists, experts, about not only what you intend to do, politicians, but show us proof why this is effective. So thinking about the effects of regulations, about the consequences of how we teach, what will be the consequences for economy. These questions cannot be asked inside the institutions related to the government. They should be asked about you, to all experts, researchers, politicians. And I think that for now, the Institute is trying to play this role. And I think that this is a great trust from the side of the ministry, that for the first time these things are being developed in our Institute and not politically. So for the first time, the reform of the curriculum and the tables that are writing these, for the first time in the history of Poland, have been chosen in an open call. There were recruitment tasks that had to be fulfilled, and neither myself nor anyone in the ministry participated in the selection of these people. There was a committee, like in a corporation, and they sent their first inputs. They've received a lot of hot data insofar as how to change it. So I think that we are going towards this direction, evidence-based education, but the path ahead of us is still very, very long. But it's very important not to be not like with the Finnish expert, that we shouldn't use our heart. We should look at the studies. The only competence of the future that will be useful to every company in the future is the ability to learn new things quickly. And how to learn new things quickly, unfortunately, you have to have foundations. So even if you look at nowadays reports for countries that made some errors in education, there is a known report for Eastern Asia that the World Bank has written. It's called Back to Foundations. So going back to basic competences and skills that allow to build on that. And one of these basic skills is understanding what we read. So reading comprehension. So readership. So to name this whole commotion makes sense. If we know that readership or literacy translates to cognitive results, this translates to the productivity of the labor market, which translates to economic growth. So this actually translates to democracy. So yes, thank you. Thank you that this title of our conference has been approved of. Well, as the activist who is trying. Well, I do remember a conversation a few years ago when I asked someone in the Ministry of Culture if there would be an opportunity to start a cooperation with the Ministry of Health. And I saw the fear in their eyes. And I'm not critical towards that person, actually, but that it's so difficult that we live in those silos and that the Ministry of Culture, the idea that the Minister of Culture would speak to the Ministry of Health about reading, that was shocking. That was terrifying for them. Could I add anything? If we look at the facts, like a year earlier, there were 30% salary wage raises for teachers. I'm not saying that it actually took care of a gap in their wages. But in a moment when we have a procedure of excessive deficit, that was a gigantic effort from the side of Minister of Finance. So I think that Minister of Finance is looking kindly at education if we look at facts.
And then looking at those employee benefits, multi-sport, and literacy, I would disagree that the benefits come from the employers because they want to have better health amongst the employees. They simply know they do their maths. This is sheer economy, that the cost of such a sports club membership as a benefit, let's say it's €100 per day, the cost is lower than what we have when it comes to the health. So this is simply an equation. If we want to change anything in education, this is about the analysis of incentive, checking which benefits are attractive, what works, and showing that creating more attractive jobs is actually a path to success from the economic point of view. I do believe at the in the goodwill of employers, but this is also sheer economy. This is not just money. This is also effectiveness and usefulness. I'm not sure if there are other questions. Ladies and gentlemen, I am probably the oldest participant of this conference. In the 1990s, I co-created the Confederation of Polish Employers. I often participated in the meetings of the International Labour Organization, and I was always surprised how our colleagues from other countries talked about education and the influence, the impact of education on the job market. We got used to having sectoral silo Poland. Okay, education, that's the problem of the Ministry of Education. No, this is not the problem of the Ministry of Education. This is a problem of us, of employers. And so, of course, employers often buy those sports benefits, multi-sport. They sponsor different sports events. But do the employers think about the CSR programs and the support for education, that they should support education, and then the reform of education? Of course, we always have an issue with inertia when it comes to any reform. And we have the society of knowledge, but we need the society of competences. And this is where the employers play a great role regarding pro-educational activities and what can support education. Because education, through its inertia, actually means that any changes will take a long time to work. I would like your comment and answer partially as well. Yes, I agree with you that employers have a role to play. I would suggest that there is a correction here. Many employers already do a lot. And of course, when it comes to the benefits, this multi-sport, the gyms or sports, that is one of the benefits, but not the only one. For example, Lewiatan sponsors language courses for those who want to learn foreign languages, and there are lots of different languages on offer. companies that are part of our association have a great array of different benefits. So I would disagree that it doesn't exist. I would agree that we are in silos, that where it's convenient, we say, oh, it's a problem of the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage, and there is no connection between those ministries, but we try to overcome this lack of contact. I totally agree that we should work on the creation of competence-based society. The competences have to be universal, and there has to be a broad spectrum of competences. What you have emphasized, that we should continue learning all the time, always very quickly, that is part of our world as well. And then what we heard, that the technology makes us learn all the time. And those of us who are not in that mode, they already lose. And it's not just about switching on another technological option that will give us a result quicker. Of course, this is nice if you use it according to the rules and effectively, but usually if you don't know it, it is completely useless. I don't know whether you have noticed that, but on some profiles there was an ad. If you use ChatGPT just like Google should, you are doing this wrong. This was an ad on social media. Give me so much time, I will show you how to do it so that it is effective and it makes sense. And so an average user of one service of another doesn't know about it until someone teaches them how to do it. So we start with the basics and we go back to the basics. And all the programs show us that we create the culture of learning regardless of the method and what we are learning. This is something that really supports our foundations. And I believe that all of our programs, all of the educational groups and all of the employers, and we saw it with the British example, and this works on our market as well. We need to continue to do this continuously on the local level. Then we create bigger communities, and then this translates into using that in bigger educational projects, whether that is on the level of the ministry or of individual groups. And I think that is key in this very technological world as well. I think Piotr wanted to say something. I wanted to say briefly that I disagree. Wonderful. This is about critical thinking, said Maria. Because, first of all, this is about literacy, health literacy, financial literacy. And of course, we have got this sectoral approach to cognitive competences, and that people who are in the financial sector don't understand the agreements that they sign. They don't know about the interest rate, for example. They don't understand it in the banking sector. So lack of literacy and functional illiteracy will be a threat to the banking sector and the financial sector. Health literacy, the ability to use medication by individuals. Health medication is about using medication that are not used appropriately, using medication that, when taken in combination, they are dangerous to your health. Over-the-counter in Poland is used widely, and people use that medication, OTC, without reading the instructions. And so we are a country where we self-administer a lot of medication in order to be healthy and deal with different issues, also when it comes to issues after a visit to the doctors. So we look at different areas where those problems occur. But I wouldn't say that at the end of the day, everything is an issue with education. Well, much of it is. So this is why the Ministry of Education also needs to be aware of it. So, we always talk about economy. It's an issue with the education. People are incompetent. We have an issue with future employment as well. People should learn about this artificial intelligence at school, etc., etc. But we do have depopulation in Poland. We are going to have fewer and fewer people leaving schools. The numbers are decreasing already. People who are employed, well, that number decreases even with immigration from Belarus. So the people who go through this amazing, beautiful system of education, where everything is going to be included, there will be fewer of them on the market than the older people who had gone through the old system, yes? Whether middle high schools or going back to the 8+4 system, for example, 8+5. So this is the task not of employers, again, because if we agree that education is a public good, we finance it from the taxes, this is part of our constitution, this is the task of the state, at least that is my opinion of a person who has worked for the Polish state on many occasions. This is about how to raise the competencies of those who are out of the educational system, how to encourage them to learn, to read more. I don't know the answer. I'm only a banking economist at the moment, but this is a task that we need to solve, and this is not a task for the Ministry of Education alone.
Very quick story, which I think kind of sums up my opinion on this. 7 years ago, we noticed in primary schools that where the local health service was making cuts in testing children's eyes, the literacy levels were going down within 2 years in those schools. And we went to the Department of Health and we said, you need to reinstitute health tests, eyesight testing, because children can't read, because they can't see. And the Department of Health said, that's not our problem. We're here for health outcomes, not education outcomes. So we talked to Boots Opticians, which is a big Walmart company in the United Kingdom. They give all their staff, talk about staff benefits, one of their staff benefits is 3 days a year to volunteer in a community. And we said, can you ask all your optometrists to volunteer their time into schools in communities, not to read stories to children or to paint walls, but to be optometrists, to use their skills, to test children's eyesight. And we found that 20% of those children they tested had undiagnosed eyesight issues. And within 2 years, all the literacy levels had returned to the level in those schools had returned. And as a result, government has shifted its policy. Now, that is a good example where actually silos were limiting children, only the business community, and only a partnership with the business community actually shifted government's thinking. But it was also a partnership with the voluntary sector, with a community organisation, my charity, which actually prompted it. So the power is in the partnership, and unless we mobilise that partnership, silos will continue.
Ola, to ja jeszcze tylko dodam, że żeby nie myśleć, nie chciałabym.
I wouldn't like to think about business and cooperation of business just to show that it's great when we have the third sector and the business sector working together. The challenges that I have mentioned are global challenges that shake our societies at the moment. We are not going to solve them through charity. We cannot count on a few companies who are going to chip in and organize reading corners in a few shopping centers. This is not going to solve the issue of literacy in Poland or globally. It's great that we are doing this, and congratulations to everyone who is doing this. So I am really involved socially. We are on the bright side, and we should contribute to the civil society. However, we need to demand systemic solutions. These are political issues. We have to be aware what we await from our politicians and make them accountable as well. This is about the algorithms as well. and what makes us addicted. So at the moment, it's video and not the text that speaks to people. This is where the development is. And so if we don't have regulations at the level of the EU, we've got the AI Act, Digital Service Act, and other acts as well. But we have a big issue with our partners from across the pond, because most of the platforms are American platforms. So the American administration, they don't want to talk about any solutions that would limit the freedom of speech, but they don't look at the influence over children. So Harari mentioned, probably all of you have read his books. No one knows how the internet works. No one has voted for the internet, all the algorithms, and nobody understands how that works. But it is part of our democracy. So we have to start thinking about and learning how algorithms rank, learning how to use them, and then vote for the politicians that are going to regulate them in a way that we want to regulate those algorithms, rather than allowing that Elon Musk of this world would decide how our children are educated and what they are fed with.
Janusz Turski, first of all, thank you for the invitation and the possibility to participate. And in the 4th edition, we would like also participate as partners of this event. But my question is the following. Next to this, I'm sorry, I can't hear the speaker too far from the microphone. The drop of need of the market for the graphical paper is not like readership, the victim of erosion, which the paper is, which is the carrier of knowledge and information. There was youth here today, and I believe that there are still young people here. I don't know. I don't see them in the room anymore. But what weight could be assigned to the role of demotivation of using paper in readership? I believe that this can prove that whatever is on paper is something old. It's passé, because youth reads. If they communicate on social media, they answer, they communicate their posts, there is interaction. So were there any studies done so that this campaign that we call greenwashing, that it kind of hits not only the interest of business, of the producers of paper, but also results in the erosion of reputation and being used of getting information and knowledge or reading paper edition, that we are used to it. I'm not sure I understood your question well. Yeah, it's about rejecting some schemes and whatever is old-fashioned. I don't know if I understood your question well. If you're asking if paper is unfashionable, no. Well, human eye prefers text on paper, even if it's not perfect and there are some micro differences in the print. And we read it better than a perfect text on a Kindle or something. I read a lot on a Kindle. And it's better to learn and get information from paper, for example, in a magazine with beautiful pictures and layout, compared to some very simple computer edition or social media edition. Nevertheless, paper is very expensive. It's heavy, transporting it to places where it's sold as a newspaper or a book, and storage. It's very expensive. Social media is very cheap because it's theoretically for free. So we pay for it with our data and our time. But content is for free in real time and adapted to us by algorithms. So algorithms collect data about every single person for 16 hours per day and present such contents that the brain of a given person will register and react to it. So scandalous, shocking, and also something that makes us addicted. So if we have such a source of contents that makes us addicted, and we have quite neutral, natural, and expensive source of content, then we know that we will reach to that one which is close to us for 14, 15 hours per day because we are addicted. I think that paper will be still available as a luxury career for people who are aware or who are affluent. Well, we will have to finish our meeting. Just a word about the paper. I'm sorry, but the sound is not good enough for translation. Insofar as newspapers and press, it escaped a long time ago. So yeah, newspapers are read online, not on paper, but reading books. What do we read? We read text. Literacy is a very kind of huge notion, but there was a moment when we were talking about reading books. A complex text that has beginning, end, author, and a cover. This is something else. It doesn't have to be paper. It can be Kindle or something else, but this is a book in different manifestations. So it can be digital or paper. The paper is still doing well. E-books are expensive. We don't read many books compared to other neighbor countries in the digital form, insofar as reading after school, after work, because we don't read many professional books. We read articles. Or we listen to podcasts, and books are not read very often as professional books. Mainly, what is in the studies of adult Poles are books which are read for pleasure or for information, and they are usually on paper. Teenagers who've learned about the book online, the publishing houses publish them, they sell it in a smart way, and this is read on paper. And these are young girls who read I don't know how many books per month, and they stand in line for 13 hours to get a signature autograph of their favorite author. Any other voices? There is someone who would like to speak. We are about to finish. I think that this is, really the last question. We are together with Marynia in the movement SOS for Education, and I have a feeling after what you've said about the tasks in business that education is your task, a public task, but I believe that this is our shared interest, and I would have a request and proposal for business organization to feel the willingness and readiness to get involved in advocacy activities, because as individual activities, the best charity will not do much. Advocacy is necessary. In better education, social organizations do that. That's great. It's important. It's a great effort that we do, but the voice of business would be very helpful. Therefore, whenever you speak to the government, like Lewiatan does, employers organization, speaking about what is important for the business. I'm just guessing, regulations, taxes, etc. It would be great to be just as vocal when we talk about education. I haven't checked how many times in our Prime Minister education appeared or reading appeared in the Prime Minister's speech. So, but it all translates to politics, and the advocacy work, I think, is necessary, and the solidarity of the sector, of the industry, in going out of the silos. Just one sentence, not as a librarian, but as a councillor in the county. What you've said, I really agree. I'm in the education committee there, and recently, a few months ago, we had the meeting with the local entrepreneurs. Some of entrepreneurs didn't come, but a big group did come, actually. And thanks to their involvement, our powiat, our county, opened new classes in technical schools or vocational schools. So it can be combined. But it's true that we need the will of both sides, both parties. But I see more and more often that entrepreneurs are aware of the fact that an understanding with the local government results in something good for them, because they're new employees, simply. Just one more word, if I may add. Of course, I agree with you, and I hope that it was said in the earlier statement from my side. I can only talk about some harbingers of hope, things that do happen. There is a competition done every year for entrepreneurs that cooperate with vocational schools. And this is done in many different ways. But this is targeted actually at development of skills and not investing in schools. Of course, investing in schools as well. For instance, there's a big photography company that has sponsored photographic equipment for the vocational school, educating photographers. And I could bring up many other examples of this type. But I wanted to say that I agree with Ola that we need systemic solutions, and we should work in all sections to demand them from the ones in power, but also supporting them in diagnosing what is necessary. Because the times when the ministries were designing and then entrepreneurs were sitting down and wondering what to do with it, well, I hope that this is to a big degree behind us, because we do speak, us as Lewiatan, but together with other organizations, we talk to the government and directly with individual ministries and other organizations about what works, what doesn't. I was trying to present to you some examples that were fitting to our discussion, but there are many, many other initiatives of this type. Personally, I really believe in grassroots work, not on the level of silos, but on the level of local communities, which are connected to one another, are in touch with one another, and together they go one level higher and higher, and finally the ministry gets a signal which is really mirrored in reality and in real needs of these individual communities. And this is a society that I wish to see, and I try to help with that as well. I think there were many voices that were showing that what Jonathan does and what Diana does and many others, these are all things of this type. But I think it's a justified dream of local activists to, like Ola said, so the big decision takers would see how justified are these solutions. Okay, we will end at that. I would like to thank my panelists very much. I think I have one more slide to show, so big applause for you, ladies and gentlemen.